The most important thing that no one talks about, including your physicians typically, is the quality of the LDL. LDL by itself is a patch when it comes to cardiovascular disease. If you get a little tear or you get an injury to the endothelial lining, the lining of the inside of a blood vessel, particularly an artery like a coronary artery, then the LDL that's swimming by, that's, kind of passing through, is trying to patch that damage that's occurred to the inside of that vessel wall. The thing that's really important to understand, though, is there are two types of LDL cholesterol. There's small, very dense LDL particles. These are particles that are oxidized or damaged. And those are the sneaky little bastards that sneak into and get into that tear in the endothelial lining and create the plaque that everybody's kind of heard of, these plaques that grow and block these coronary arteries. Now, there's another kind of LDL cholesterol that no one's looking at, and that's large, fluffy LDL particles, which are great transport vehicles, but do not get into these small tears in the endothelial lining and do not contribute to cardiovascular disease. Actually, quite the opposite. If you have mostly large, fluffy LDL particles, you're going to have very little risk of cardiovascular disease. I don't care what the LDL number is. The amount doesn't matter if it's this large, fluffy kind. However, if it's these small, little, dense particles, those can get into that endothelial lining, that blood vessel lining that's damaged, and now it can do its thing and do damage. So LDL numbers don't matter. What really matters is the breakdown of what kind of LDL particles do you have. The other thing I wanted to talk about is, well, let's think about what causes that damage to the endothelial lining in the first place. What happens? What causes damage to the inside of those blood vessels? Well, what happens is stress causes oxidation to the LDL particles. They become damaged and now they're dangerous. So the thing that causes the initial damage to that endothelial lining, though, is inflammation, chronic inflammation. And typically what causes that chronic inflammation is our diet. And typically what causes that chronic inflammation is insulin resistance. So insulin resistance is actually the primary driver of cardiovascular disease and what typically will cause that inflammation that causes the damage in the first place. So, we can talk about LDL cholesterol all day long. We could talk about lowering LDL cholesterol with statin drugs. But if you don't take care of what's actually causing the endothelial damage in the first place, the damage to the inside lining of the vessels, particularly the cardiovascular or coronary artery vessels, then you're going to never take care of the underlying root cause, the thing that is causing the damage in the first place. Let's say you even do have little oxidized LDL particles, which are dangerous. If you never have damage to the endothelial lining, those particles cannot do any damage. They are absolutely meaningless. They don't contribute to cardiovascular disease if you've treated the underlying cause of the endothelial lining damage. So insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, these are the underlying causes. They did a study recently of the top 10 things that are causes of coronary artery disease. The number one thing that they found was insulin resistance. LDL cholesterol did rank, but it ranked about number 8 out of the top 10. All right, so it's not unimportant, but it's far less important than the top 1, 2, or 3 things that will contribute to the underlying vessel wall damage in the first place. So the other thing I want you to understand is if you've been insulin resistant for a long period of time, a lot of times insulin resistance goes undetected. They don't even think about insulin resistance until you're pre-diabetic or diabetic. But insulin resistance might be going on for decades before you come up with a diagnosis of either prediabetes or diabetes. So if you're insulin resistant and you've been insulin resistant for many, many years, then it's going to take some time for that insulin resistance to reverse itself. Even if you change your diet, even if you do, change to a healthy way of eating. And you also understand that the more insulin resistant you are, the less carbohydrate you can actually tolerate. So even healthy carbohydrates like vegetables may be an issue if you're super insulin resistant. Now, as the insulin resistance comes down, or a better way of saying it is as you become more insulin sensitive, then you get rid of those ultra processed foods, you get rid of the sugar, you get rid of the refined carbohydrates, and now you can start to add in some of those vegetables and fruits and other things that are carbohydrates but are whole food carbohydrates and much more healthy for you. But when you're first starting off, you're trying to turn around this insulin resistance. You're trying to prevent a progression of cardiovascular disease and coronary artery disease. Even a small amount of carbohydrate may be really damaging for you, so keep that in mind. So again, I want to leave you with this. Common sense says that if we've had the cure for LDL cholesterol, if we've had a way to reduce total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol to manageable levels, and incidentally, HDL cholesterol, the good cholesterol, the quote unquote good cholesterol, they've tried for many, many years to create a drug to raise HDL cholesterol unsuccessfully. And actually, some of the medications they tried to come out with were actually very, very dangerous. So if we've had these drugs, these statin drugs for 50 years plus, and we've been able to manage people's LDL cholesterol very, very well, why on earth is coronary artery disease and cardiovascular disease still the #1 killer in America and around the world? So you've got to ask yourself that. You've got to think about that and understand that there's more going on than just cholesterol. So I appreciate you listening to this explanation. I hope you learned a little something. I hope you understand now that LDL cholesterol might not be the primary driver, might not be something that's very dangerous. Let me back up and say one other thing about LDL. If you're eating unhealthy, if you are eating tons of ultra-processed foods, if you're eating tons of refined carbohydrates, sugar and candies and cakes and pastries and pasta and bread and all of these things, then you're going to have very high triglycerides, and that LDL cholesterol is going to be damaged, and the numbers are going to go up, and now it is going to be dangerous. However, if you've lowered everything, you're eating right, you're doing all the right things, you're eating a low carbohydrate diet, you're managing your insulin levels, you're bringing those insulin levels down, you're making yourself more insulin sensitive instead of being insulin resistant, and your cholesterol is still high, I'm here to tell you that that's not something you really need to worry about. Now, I'm not a physician. I'm not here to tell you in particular, the person watching this video, that your LDL cholesterol is not a problem, because depending on these other factors, it might be. But I'm telling you, it's not the main thing. It's not the main driver. So I think you should have this conversation with your physician. I think you should discuss this. Your physician might push back a bit. But the reality is, ask them this question. If statins have been around for so long and statins are so useful at reducing LDL cholesterol, why is everybody still in trouble? Why are we still dropping dead from heart attacks? And see what they have to say. So thanks so much for watching. Catch you in the next video.